Well, hello everyone. Andrew Smith here and Eugene Mashuro. We both work for a company called Oxide Alpha, which is an entity that works closely with the core teams on Tezos. We are not as art-focused as a lot of the participants that we've seen in the conference so far, but we understand deeply the technology, and you can think of us as an infrastructure and plumbing company. Eugene is actually a co-author on the FA2 standard, which underpins every NFT on Tezos. So one of the things that has sort of happened as an outgrowth of the definition of that standard was a lot of people trying to figure out early on, what can you do with these NFTs? What sort of applications can you build? What utility do they have? Obviously, the art use case is one that everybody here is pretty familiar with, but there are others, including one that's pretty novel in the DMV use case. Eugene, you want to talk about some of the just basic use cases for NFTs?
Yeah, basic cases for NFT, like first of all, you can represent like things like event tickets, like royalty points, like whatever you do with other applications issuing tickets, you can make it more transparent. You can still have like ability to trade and exchange tickets transparently using some auctions or some other smart contract applications. Also, you can unlock some perks. You can also produce some digital arts and merchandise attached to the tickets, digital tickets connected to the events or to the artists and performers. In other use, it's certificate of the ownership, like with the art. You have some digital art which everyone can see, but you have an NFT and it's recorded like this actual art is belong to the particular entity or particular person. The same thing you can have with any other physical assets. Like one of the examples is the DMV project is a car title. So instead of having like a piece of paper which saying this car belongs to you, you can have a digital NFT asset on the blockchain, and it's also opens like make it more transparent, easy to report any attempt of fraud, and also enforce certain rules when you do something like selling your car and transferring the title. Some of the rules you need to follow can be enforced by the other smart contracts, and again, it's made more transparent and verifiable by the public. And third case is probably coordination. It's like a good analogy is a relay racing when the people compete, like the team compete, and different runners run different segments of the whole course and passing the baton. So it's like your NFT can be, so to speak, like ball in your court. So if you need to coordinate, again, like example with the DMV, when somebody, like when you sell the car, so you need to interact between seller, buyer, and DMV agent, which needs to validate information and make it a go. And also the rules can be enforced, like the activity that somebody needs to perform some activity can be indicated by passing this NFT token to that entity or that person.
So those three use cases, basically tickets that can be augmented with perks or digital rights. You've got the second case, which is certificate of ownership or title. And then the third case, which is a little bit interesting, is as a mechanism for coordination. So at Oxide Alpha, like I said, we built lots of applications that sort of try to put the full journey life cycle around this. We did one for somebody that was selling like carbon offset credits, but for water. And so as part of the process, you would buy the rights to particular water and then leave it in a river instead of consuming it. And that transaction was memorialized as an NFT. That's more along the first use case. The second one about a certificate of ownership, the reason why the NFT piece there is such a good match for vehicle titles is that owning a car is not, if you have a car in your garage, it doesn't mean you own it, right? If you have a piece of artwork hanging on a wall, it doesn't mean you own it. The ownership, as far as the government is concerned, of that car is your possession of that title, that piece of paper. And so your possession of an NFT is a really good model for how this works today in the real world. It's not like we had to do a big culture shift or change. In fact, there are already digital titles and digital titling system in several other states. So what does NFT, what does blockchain add to this? Why did California bite, and why are we even writing this stuff? Primarily because all those other digital titling systems get stuck at the point of transfer, right? This is where it becomes difficult to exercise the, if Eugene's got a car and I want to buy it, and we meet in a 7-Eleven parking lot, and he's got his paper title in hand, and I've got a duffel bag full of cash, that should be enough to get the transaction done, but it's not, right? We need the coordination of the state, we need the official passing of the ownership record from him to me, and that would happen with a lot of mail, a lot of physical paper, a lot of old form-fed printers, and workflow that just gets very cumbersome and very expensive. In fact, also resource intensive. During the pandemic, they ran out of the paper that titles get printed on. So there were months of delay in some cases for people to actually take official ownership of their cars because the paper didn't exist. There are also different fraud vectors that come into play when you have physical paper, like people chipping the ink off and rewriting names and addresses, things like that. In any case, the coordination between, let's move back to that parking lot transaction where I give Eugene the duffel bag full of cash. How does the government figure out that we've initiated this transaction? Well, I'm going to take that paper title from him, put it in an envelope, and send it to the DMV. We did a site tour at DMV,
and also have this wet signature.
Wet signature, sure. And at the DMV, they have literal laundry carts full of mail every day that make their way up these freight elevators that get offloaded into these massive processing machines. And it's as paperwork heavy as you would imagine it could be. And all of that then is queued and turned into to-do items for lots of people and staff that have to sort of just drone their way through this work. With the blockchain involved, the transaction becomes something that is all coordinated asynchronously. And this is the third use case for NFT that we think is pretty novel in the DMV case. And it's one that is not immediately apparent, but is only achievable with this, with the NFT mechanism.
And I would like to add one example from what we implemented for DMV, at least as proof of concept. For instance, you cannot sell your car if you have bank have a lien on your car.
Right.
And in the regular case, you as a buyer, you need to inspect paper titles that it doesn't have lien holder, and DMV need to do the same thing using the internal system. In our case, if we keep this lien holder information on the blockchain and enforce this coordination and all the steps, we can prevent the car even start the sale or transfer if you have a lien on your car.
So back to that parking lot transaction, I'm sitting here on my app and I say, Eugene, transfer that to me. He wouldn't be able to do it. He wouldn't even be able to push the button because he still owes money to a bank. So how can he sell the car to me? But if it's outright owned by him and I want to buy it, he can push that button. The NFT is transferred to me provisionally. It's actually getting a smart contract. And this coordination between the NFT and the smart contracts is how you establish this workflow and asynchronous coordination, right? So I approved the transfer, I accepted. At this point, there is state engagement, so they're going to have notification that we've conducted this transaction provisionally, but obviously I've got to do a few things. I've got to pay maybe a transfer tax, I've got to figure out a smog fee, there are things that have to be done off-chain, but verified by some third party with authority. So at that point, the NFT is passed to DMV, who conducts whatever checks or things they need to do. And as those are verified, the ultimate resolution of this is the destruction of one NFT, the creation of a new one, and me having a digital title free and clear, and now provable ownership of this physical asset. So I guess that's there's a lot more going on in the background here. I don't know where we are on our time. I think that's about 10 minutes. That's the scoop.